And now I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on leadership and development, writing for the business professional. It is my pleasure to introduce our featured presenter today. She is executive leadership coach and professional development consultant, Ms. Latasha Sturdivant. Latasha, you now have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where everyone is logging in. I'm excited to be able to spend some time talking with everyone about writing for the business professional. This workshop, as has already been stated, will provide an overview of a number of key topics throughout this throughout our time, throughout the workshop. However, we'll dive in deeply in one section so that you get a taste of what you would have in store should you take the entire class. I'm excited. I really, really believe in and value the importance of writing well and working with others in the context of writing and collaboratively developing different pieces and reports and all of those things that we all have to touch when we're doing our work. And communication is really key in that, particularly as leaders in our departments, in our fields, in our companies. And so this particular workshop focuses on communicating more effectively with collaborative writing tools and techniques, recognizing and applying grammatical best practices. Yes, there are those things from 7th grade that we have to still continue to use, leveraging concepts in sentence and paragraph construction, and then applying all of that within the structure of agendas or emails, business proposals, and business reports. So while, the full workshop, what you will find is that we really progress through a lot of mechanical techniques. Some of it is review for some, and then diving a little bit deeper with some of those for some others. However, we then cull all of that to be able to really then work through how we apply it, how we take some of those transactional aspects of writing and really apply it to have transformational work and leadership and efforts and team building and sales and delivery in our work. Capturing the lessons, I just want to encourage, as you listen to the webinar, you're taking time to dial in, that you think about what is it about this time together that we'll spend here, 30 to 45 minutes, that we will spend that will cause you to have some takeaways. And so what I encourage you to think about, one memory, one new piece of information, maybe even one question, right? And so if you jot something down or as you're following along, I hope that you're able to take away some pieces that you will then be able to apply immediately. And sometimes it's simply a jarring of a memory, right? We all have, all of us write every single day. And so what might this webinar cause you to remember in your own work, in your own journey? And so it may jar a memory. Or this webinar may cause you to experience something, or the experience of this webinar may cause you to gain a new piece of information. So what might that be? Or what kind of question might it cause you to ask that you did not ask before? And so just think about the investment of time and want you to be able to be intentional in thinking about that. So I'll refer back to this along the way in our time together. The full workshop really works through working with words, constructing sentences, constructing paragraphs, and then transitioning into finding facts and working collaboratively with other colleagues in section 5. And that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time today. Again, the full workshop really goes through writing meeting agendas, emails, reports, proposals, and even in the proofreading and finishing. So I'll just, how we'll divide our time or use our time today, I will give a brief overview for some of these sections, and then we'll get into the meat of section 5. Working with words. So there are, again, this isn't meant to be a return to middle school. However, what I do know as an English major, as an English instructor, as one who's reviewed proposals, is that there are a lot of things we can take for granted. And the beautiful thing about this workshop is that it does review some of those pieces so that we can really maximize every aspect of the writing process, including just the building blocks of any writing, regardless of the actual purpose of it, business, personal, social, whatever it is, are the actual words that we're using. And the English language is a beautifully complex structure. And the thing about it is that, you know what, we spend time going through this workshop thinking about some of those easy to either overuse or misuse words that can impact the overall prose and the overall structure and how we're using words. So we talk about not just simply a review of what those are, but then some tips and tricks and maybe even some cheat sheets, if you will, that you might just have in your office so that you can quickly identify, hey, wait a minute, is it a fact or is it a defect? Which one am I supposed to use right now? The other part of our workshop is really thinking about then constructing those sentences. We're talking about words, and then building on that is also a need for us to think about sentence structure. And so we move from word usage into sentence construction, and that particular section of our workshop really just talks about punctuation and talks about different types of sentences and how we can best utilize the English language and structuring sentences in order to deliver the impact and the message that we really want to use. That, of course, then builds into the construction of paragraphs. And, you know, just carefully choosing our words, carefully choosing our sentences so that we really build upon the paragraphs and the overall message that we are seeking to deliver. And so this module is where we really spend time talking about the paragraphs and how to really stay focused on our overall objective of what it is we want to accomplish when we are constructing our paragraphs, and to be able to streamline and make the most use and to be as efficient and effective as we can with our sentence structure and constructing our paragraphs. Then we get into a little bit more of some of the things that, you know, some of us might think is a little bit more juicy, but these things don't matter if we don't get that front end correct. And part of it is just finding the facts. So when we are doing our writing and we're putting together proposals, or it could be an agenda, or it could be an email, there's information that needs to go into that document, into that writing. And it may be something that's just we're looking up on the internet. It may be conversations with other colleagues. How often do we go and take the time to find the facts that we truly need to convey the message we want to deliver? And do we have the right facts? Have we looked at all of the right data to organize our information and to be able to deliver that punch that we really want to deliver to our client, to our boss, whoever it might be, another colleague even? And then we spend quite a bit of time talking about collaborative business writing, and this is where we will really spend time today. I'm going through in the order of the actual workshop flow, and so we talk about collaborative business writing because we know that oftentimes, and more, we find ourselves writing in groups, in teams, creating stories. What narrative are we telling? What pitch are we trying to deliver to the client? Who else? What proposal do we write that's due tomorrow, that needs to go off to the government next week? And so there are many, many opportunities that we all have to collaboratively write. And what are some of the techniques and tools that we could use to make that process as effective and efficient as possible? So we'll come back to this. I do want to just share that as a part of the workshop, we also talk about just writing meeting agendas. I'm sure many of us have been the victim, perhaps being in meetings that were not well organized. You didn't know why you were there. Perhaps the objective wasn't clear, and it was confusing. You weren't prepared. And so talking about how we can use the agenda beforehand, during, and after meetings to really accomplish the goals that we seek to accomplish, so that information flows, things are organized, and you can ensure that the time is used well. And so meeting agendas, working through that process is a part of this business writing, and we want to make sure that we are able to excel in any of the areas. the one of the other aspects is emails, reports, and proposals. And I know we all send emails every day. We may even write reports at least once a week, and often many of us are spending time working on proposals. And it could be a proposal for a number of things. It could be to pitch a particular sales item. It could be a proposal for grant funding. So whatever it might be, oftentimes the proposals and reports, we may find that we have to write those collaboratively. And oftentimes our emails, may end up being that in and of itself is really containing that cover sheet, is really that entree that the reader has into what your overall message is that you're trying to deliver. So we spend time walking through and talking about that as well. So let's dive in here and really spend some time talking about the collaborative business writing process. One of the key things as we work with anyone outside of ourselves as an individual is, what is it that we are really trying to accomplish? And clarifying the objective is key. It's first and foremost. And that's really for any of the various forms of writing that we are interacting with, right? Whether it's an email, quite frankly, it could even be a text message. We need to know, why is it that I'm sending this communication to that person? And it's even more important in a collaborative environment. So let's say there's 2 of you, there's 4 of you, there could be 5 or 6 or more of you who need to work on creating a report or a proposal or some kind of collaborative writing piece. And how do we do that together? One of the things that I like to put out there on the very, very front end is that it really is about both the process and the content. And often when we have a task at hand and we need to produce X number of pages, X number of with X content in that within that time frame, then how can we get it done as quickly as possible? And so here are some questions that could be useful as you're thinking about how you're going to accomplish your goal as a team and do it in a way that will not be too frustrating and colleagues will not hate each other at the end of the process. So why are we doing this project? What do we need to accomplish? Who is involved or affected? Who are your stakeholders? And what aspects need to be addressed in the project? So, one of the pieces that often comes up is, okay, wait, who exactly is supposed to get this? Are we writing this for our boss? Or are we actually writing this for the board? Are we writing this for the community? Or am I writing this for the VP of sales who's going to make the final decision on this? Am I writing this for the end user? Or am I writing this for the person who's going to fund that particular product that we are making a pitch on? So clarifying who the user is, who all your stakeholders are, and what will help also determine what needs to be addressed in the project. So if you have something, I encourage you right now, just think about any project, any collaborative writing project that you may have had in the past 3 months, that you're currently working on, or that you know is upcoming. Hold it in your mind for the next 30 minutes. Hold it right there and think about, what parts could have gone a little bit more smoothly? What was not necessarily well defined on the front end of the process? And so this is where you can either jar a memory, or you might think about some new things that would have been helpful. So I want to talk a little bit about some practical writing approaches. There are a number of ways to approach writing, and you really have to think about, what's my jam? And what do I mean by that when I say what's my jam? What's your sweet spot? Where do you shine? What comes naturally for you as a team member, and what is your role within that team of writers? Are you the fact finder? Are you the reviewer? Are you the, I really do a really great job of reading the room and understanding how others might need or want to contribute? Do you love proofreading and editing, and you can bring those thoughts together? So sometimes we may or may not even assign the roles. However, we also want to think about where natural strengths and talents lie. So the collaborative writing process really is a great tool. And, often it may not be a formal, external piece of communication that you're creating. Some of you may be in the business or have a task at hand of creating a manual, and it may be a collaborative writing process to create a process and procedures manual for your company. Maybe you need to design, here's really our workflow, and really walk through all of the pieces that would that would be all the inputs that would go into that. So really think about, again, what are the purposes and the many ways that collaborative writing projects come onto our table, that make their way onto our to-do list. And the other element that I'll have you kind of hold in your mind as well is that oftentimes those collaborative writing projects aren't happening in person. And so it may be that you have to Zoom with your teammates. You may need to think about whatever Skype sessions you're going to have, and how might you use technology to help the efficiency and just the flow of your collaborative writing project. So a couple of the benefits to keep in mind as well is to think about, when we're going through this, it really can feel a little bit cumbersome. It can feel like we have to take into account other people's opinions. However, I'll also offer that, it increases some communication amongst all of the team members. And the good thing about that is that we can get a better understanding of what is real, what is true, what works well for some and maybe not for others, and to be able to increase contributions from different parties. And so that's a very positive thing. So when you think about, what type of writing approach do I want to use for this particular collaborative writing task? When you ask yourself that question, knowing that, yes, you have an actual task, an actual project to finish at the end, that you could also consider, while we're doing that, it is also important that my team, is able to really hear the perspective of different people in our organization, or maybe different consumers, or maybe I want this process to also help us build leadership among some key members. So then that might help you drive which particular writing approach you would select, so that, yes, A, you will accomplish the task at hand, and B, you also can use the process as a leadership development strategy, or as a marketing strategy, or potentially as just a staff development strategy as well. So we can think about different ways that a collaborative writing project can help move team members forward in a number of ways. So we have some strategies, collaborative writing strategies. We have linear writing, parallel writing, integrated writing, and it really just depends on what you are trying to accomplish, which is why the slide that I shared probably about 3 slides ago about clarifying the objective, that is so critical. You are holding, hopefully, a collaborative writing project that you have previously been involved in, or currently or will be involved in the future. And when you think about the objective for that particular project, let's review some of these different strategies and how they would help or hinder that particular project that you have in your mind, and what might be different, or what you would add on top of the experiences that you've already had. So some of the strategies, they may rely on small groups working together. It may involve some one-on-one work happening simultaneously or concurrently and then coming back together. Other strategies may involve multiple employees working separately to integrate later. So different methods can deliver significant benefits of time and quality. And it's not that the standard linear writing process is not is not effective or is not a good process. It's just that we want to consider all options. What is the best option? And I know that, everyone has been involved with various different styles and types of strategies, and to think about, based on our objectives, based on the skill sets at hand and who's in our team members, who's on our team, what would be the best way for us to accomplish our task at hand by the deadline and deliver the results that we need to deliver. So let's go through some of the strategies. I mentioned earlier that it could be a proposal, it could be a report, it could be an internal policy or procedure document. Whatever it is, the true collaborative team really does self-organize to get the best results. And so let's talk through a couple of these. And I, would love if you would, for yourself, just take a note of what kind of resonates as in, oh, this would be awesome for use in my team or with my company, or this would never work. And so that's okay. You figure out what works best, or what you might be willing to try out, or what tweaks you might want to make. And so collaborative writing, you have this cut and paste parallel construction. And one of the aspects of this is that you are able to bring different pieces together and then eventually cut and paste it all. So with this method, team members may work individually, or they might work in groups of 2 to 3 and complete different pieces of the final project. So one person or one group, they might have finished their piece, and so they submit it to a designated editor or an assembly person, right? And that's their role. And so then that editor or that person who's compiling all the information, they'll separate these pieces and then eventually pull together one final draft. Oftentimes, a lot of teams like to work in this way. It allows for a little bit less of the back and forth in the meantime. However, it does allow for continuity of work to happen. However, what I would recommend, and some of you may have already experienced it, if you've used some version of this process, is that, if you have not clarified all aspects of the objectives and everything that needs to be considered on the front end, and you don't have the proper check-in points along the way, then when that group or that individual has sort of completed or reached that milestone for their section, and they hand it over to the editor or the compiler, and if they've missed the mark, then they spent a lot of time missing that mark, and they didn't have an opportunity for correction along the way. So what I would recommend, or what you may have already experienced in your own journey with writing professionally, is that there are those check-in points that make sense for the team, for the schedule, for the project, for calendars, in a way that's not time-consuming, but ensures that you're not showing up at the very end of a cut and paste model to then realize that perhaps someone didn't quite understand the direction that you were going. One other thing I'll note here is that whoever you choose, or whoever raises their hand to be the editor, to be the one compiling, is what voice are you as a team wanting to deliver to your audience? The audience could be your boss, the audience might be a customer. However, does that person have that skill set to then synthesize everything that's been shared into one voice? And so that's important. So yes, they need to be a great writer, but they also need to be able to think about, how can I ensure that the voice is really one voice amongst all of the different sections that have been written. So it can feel a little bit lonely, and so I would just encourage that there are some safeguards sort of put into play, so that you have a way to ensure that the voices can all be integrated into one voice. puzzle parallel construction. It's another form of bringing project parts together. And so with this method, sometimes referred to as the Frankenstein method, team members can work individually or again in groups, small groups, to complete different segments. However, in this method, the original author does not necessarily need to complete the whole assignment. Sometimes they just need to, send in a partially completed piece and let the editor finish the rest. Maybe you just need a subject matter expert on one particular component, and then they contribute that section, and then they send it on to the editor, and the editor really fills it out. So if you think about using that, then think about, okay, so not only do I need my editor to have to be a great writer and to be able to synthesize into one voice, but they also need to have broad knowledge across the different segments so they can fill in those other pieces. They can pull the puzzle together, if you will. And so with this, when you think about this, you have the person or you have your small group and they finish their part and they turn it into the designated editor, then that individual begins working, to pull together that final draft. But it will require a little bit more back and forth with the team to ensure that the bits and pieces of the individual author's work really do come together as a one solid cohesive draft. One of the advantages of this is that you do begin with many different parts on the front end, but team members have a natural way to submit finished or partially finished pieces. And what I mean when I say the natural way is that, that just creates opportunity to have conversation. So you have these naturally built-in check-ins, and you're not completing an entire section. For some proposals, that might be 10 pages. And that's a lot of time, a lot of writing, and potentially a lot of frustration if someone finds that they unfortunately might have missed the mark. So we want to avoid that if possible. So that one is similar to the other construction, other parallel piece. But, what needs to be understood is that the pieces that are being submitted, all of those pieces may not necessarily be used. And so folks have to be okay with that and knowing that they're contributing to the overall pot, if you will. So that's another one. So sequential summative construction. This is a process that it's collaborative. You are constructing, but it involves one team member creating a piece of work and then other team members subsequently adding to it in order. So there's some elements of our linear writing, if you will, but during the editing phase, each piece is added to the previous piece in sequence. And each subsequent step, right? So it also acknowledges that the previous submission is correct. So you build, you check, you revise, you move forward. So one of the benefits and why this can sometimes happen is that it allows for quick feedback and you get collective shared agreement and understanding on one aspect before building on to the next. And again, what will help you think about, is this a good approach for me to use? It depends on the objective. So for instance, if you do have the task of creating a user manual, it is essential in that particular scenario to have sound understanding of the actual order that a process should happen, right? What are these events and in what order should they occur? And if you use one of the previous approaches with the cut and paste parallel or with our puzzle construction, and you send folks off into their own corners or into their small groups, and they all write their own pieces and come back, while the steps 1 through 4 are off, it's going to throw some other things off. So this might be one of the times when this would be helpful. And so you build on it, and you build on it, and then you build on it. Some of you may be engaged in like this agile product development, and so you want to go, you look at it, you review, and if you have to, you tweak and you refine, and then you move forward. So this is one that really can be very useful when the order of events, if you will, really are important. And you do have one team member that might submit that final finished piece, but then additional team members really are adding on in that sequential order. And then everyone really is working together. At the end of the day, everyone has worked together to edit and to compile a final draft by virtue of the sequential order. So I'm going to pause for a second and just ask you in your own mind to think about that particular writing project that you're holding in your mind. And then we've already reviewed 3 different writing approaches. What might work or did not work or worked really well if it's a event from the past that you're considering with that? Is it the puzzle construction or is it a sequential order? Another one is integrating construction. And in this one, as this funnel sort of shows us here, is that, it's a type of collaboration that involves a team member creating a piece of work and then having other team members, add to it. However, what happens when we have this is that it's not suitable. You really do have to know your project, your goal, your objective, and your team members. I would say that when we're thinking about sequential pieces or integration, that we really do need to understand who our team members are and what their strong suits and skills and talents are as well that would best serve the project. Sometimes team members, it may take longer, and that would not be would not work out well for them. They would not contribute in the best way to that project. Or if it's a very, very large project, there may be or different components of a project. You might find that it is useful to actually consider utilizing a different approach for different sections within that particular writing project. So for example, if you are tasked with pulling together a very robust proposal, it could be a proposal that's going to be 50 plus pages. Well, one aspect of it may be a narrative that would lend itself to a sequential summative construction. And another aspect really would lend itself well to more of a puzzle parallel construction. It depends on what the goal is of each of the aspects of the project. And so, again, clarifying the objective and knowing the team members will help detail what is really going to be most effective, and to decide that quickly on the front end with the proper analysis will help. One of the other pieces that I really like about this workshop is that it not only spend time thinking about the mechanics and the techniques of word structure and sentence construction and paragraph construction or finding facts, and then thinking about collaborative writing approaches and strategies. But then we also spend time thinking about, well, what are the tools and processes we should use? Because it can be a lengthy process. And there's lots of tools where we can either track the flow, think about the progress. I'm sure some of you are holding in your mind a collaborative writing project from the past. It was probably difficult at some point along the way to know, is my team member on task over there? How are we collectively, mutually tracking our progress? And I don't want to micromanage, but I just want to make sure we're going to get it done on time. So that's another aspect, is to think about what makes sense, what kind of tracking, what if we have a very large project, then what kind of outline or guide should we create if there are a lot of team members over a long period of time. So not only is it about the skill set of those particular team members, but we also want to consider the number of team members, the length of the project, how long would they be engaged. And so a smaller project may create some different considerations for us to take under our belt. And so that might be, all right, we have to move fast, we have to move quick, we need to be nimble. And what would the process be that we should really consider to ensure that we are able to move as agile as possible? So that is another element of our work, is to really think through those pieces, the how many and the quantity, and to really dig into the planning, because we can have great writers and you might have mastered all of the rules of grammar, but if the planning isn't in play as it ought to be when it comes to collaborative writing, then we'll miss the mark. We will miss it. And so we would normally spend time really going into, assigning tasks and when to conduct some of those collaboration meetings and how the task will be organized and completed so that everyone is on the same page. If I am documenting and holding all of my pieces of information in SharePoint and someone else decided they wanted to do it in Google Drive, and then someone else, I don't know, they wanted to text their mother all of their drafts, well, that's going to make things a little challenging for us. And so to have that planning happen on the front end, once you've really decided on the strategy that you will use moving forward, will make things much simpler. And I'll just highlight a couple of the tools that you could consider digging into. And one of those is, storyboards, and going through various ways to think about just the flow of information, how we can get multiple ideas up in a group setting so that the team members really can assimilate that big picture and their role within it. Oftentimes it may be easier said than done to think about, okay, wait, I understand our goal. I understand the objective for the writing project, but what's my role in it? And how can I also be a good team member to ensure that I'm not a hindrance to anyone else accomplishing that goal as well? And so to be able to create an outline or a storyboard on the front end can be very useful for either larger projects or even when we have a number of team members, and we want to make sure that there's shared agreement, shared understanding on the front end of not only the overall objective, but the objectives and what we want to accomplish as you dig into each section of the writing. So I can't, articulate and stress enough the importance of really having that shared understanding moving into the writing process. So this is just an example of one way that one could use storyboarding. And if you look it up, there's many different examples, and it could be it's a very visual way. You can have a team in a room and Post-it notes are everywhere because you're able to collaboratively generate ideas or the details for the ideas that are there, so that even if you have small groups or individuals who are going to then go work parallel to construct your writing project, they have managed to walk away with details contributed by a number of individuals on the team by using a storyboarding technique in that process of brainstorming. So that's another element that is another tool that could be used to get the team on the same page in that planning and initial prep process after you have determined the best writing strategy to use moving forward. And collaborative revision. It's another element that, again, it can look different depending on the type of writing strategy or approach to it that you've chosen. And different individuals may or may not want to be involved in that particular phase of the project, but different strategies accommodate different revision processes. So there's no right or wrong way, but again, determine on the front end who, when, where, what are we revising, and to allow enough time. Because often with the collaborative writing project, please keep in mind that you will need more time to revise in that scenario than you would if you were writing the entire piece on your own and it was a solo project. So we definitely want to be able to conduct the planning on the front end where you are allowing enough time from your due date for that collaborative revision. Even if one person is really doing the revising, we want to ensure that there's enough time for the right amount of feedback when you have so many different contributors to the final project. So again, the planning. And I just wanted to have this slide up here because the team development, the team cohesion really is important. I won't dive into it, although there are other leadership development courses where we really do talk about the forming, storming, norming, and high performing stages of any type of team. And just want to point out that a collaborative writing team is indeed a team. It counts too. And if you're working on a project for more than a week, then that's a team that, where those group goals and, communication and what motivates and who's really leading and everyone's role, that's important. If that piece is overlooked, it won't serve the project's best interest. So we do want to think about who's on the team and what that team needs and how it can perform in a high functioning way. The time has gone very quickly. However, just to review briefly that, the overall goal is how we can communicate more effectively with collaborative writing tools and techniques. This is just a snapshot. Whether you're using storyboarding, you are taking the time on the front end, and having that kickoff planning session on who is going to do what, when, and what approach to the writing project you're going to decide to use. That time is essential. And just recognizing and applying those grammatical best practices. And if everyone is on that same page, then it'll make it a lot easier for the editor at the end of the day to focus on the content and voice versus did someone use affect or effect the correct way. And to think about how this can be applied to all of the ways that we communicate and need to write in the business setting. And so from emails to various agendas or business reports, it's numerous. So I'll just bring it back to the learning, the lessons learned. And if when you were holding in your mind or anything that came up related that, what did this webinar cause you to remember? Hold on to that, because our learning from birth until now, it all counts. We're just adding on, right? So if there are some pieces that that come back to your memory, hold on to that. Don't lose it. What one experience, what new piece of information has this experience caused you to know that you didn't know before? Hope you can make a note on that so you can act on it even today, even tomorrow. And then what is this investment of your time cause you to know that you didn't know before? Really, what question, what are you asking that is a little bit different now? And so what might you do different? I hope you do at least one thing a little different the next time you approach a collaborative writing project. I appreciate your time. I thank you for your investment here with us today, and I hope to see you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Latasha. If anyone has any questions while we're still on, please feel free to type those in the questions and we will go ahead and get those answered. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today. I know we weren't able to cover all aspects that we cover in our normal Writing for the Business Professional course, but this was just a glimpse of what you can learn in a full-length course. So if you are interested in more information, please contact your local center, your local New Horizons Center, or if you aren't familiar with who that is, you can also log on to our website at newhorizons.com. You can do a zip code search there and find the center nearest you. There you will also find the full course offerings under our Center for Leadership and Development. Our Writing for the Business Professional course is a 2-day course, and the next one coming up is August 5th. I did have a number of you request for the presentation, the slide deck. If you would like to receive that, that will not go along with your email tomorrow, that you will receive the recording link. But if you send me a note at kelly.waters@newhorizons.com, I can go ahead and email you that presentation as well. All right, and it looks like we, other than wanting to receive the presentation and a link to the recording, we don't have any other questions. So Latasha, thank you so much for joining us and speaking on behalf of New Horizons.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you again so much, everyone. We hope you'll reach out to your local New Horizons and join us for future webinars as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.